Hello boys. Now in the last video, I had explained to you about the lines of latitude. We'll try and recall what I did in the last video. I told you that lines of latitudes are imaginary lines that run along like a circle on the surface of the earth. And these are imaginary lines. You have to remember that lines of latitude are imaginary lines. And the main biggest circle that runs around the surface of the earth is the equator at 0 degree. And I talked about some of the special lines of latitude like the Tropic of Cancer and the Arctic Circle north of the equator, and the Tropic of Capricorn and the Antarctic Circle south of the equator. And we said as the latitudes move towards the poles, either to the North Pole, the lines become smaller, the circles become smaller till almost it is a dot. The North Pole is at 90 degrees north and it is just a dot. And in the south, we have the South Pole at 90 degrees south, or just a dot. So that is what you have to remember. Today, we are going to do longitudes. Now, longitudes are just the opposite of latitudes. Now, while latitudes went around the earth like a full circle, longitudes are just the opposite. They run from the North Pole to the South Pole. They run from the North Pole to the South Pole. Now, even the longitudes, they start at the North Pole and they end at the South Pole. Now, they are a little different from the latitudes because I told you earlier that latitudes are parallel lines. Parallel lines are lines which run alongside each other but they never meet. But longitudes, they start at the North Pole and they go around like a semicircle to the South Pole, and all the longitudes meet each other. They meet at the poles. That is a point that you have to remember. Now, just as how the latitudes were numbered, we said the equator is at 0 degree, the Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degrees north of the equator, the Arctic Circle is 66.5 degrees north of the equator. Likewise, even the longitudes have a number. They are numbered as a degree. The same thing as the latitude, but the only thing different here is while the latitudes, we remember measuring them as north of the equator or south of the equator. In the longitudes, we say like 120 degrees east of the prime meridian and 120 degrees west of the prime meridian. Now that is what you have to remember. The main longitude, like how we said the main latitude is the equator, so the main longitude is the prime meridian at 0 degree. This that you can see like a red line from the North Pole to the South Pole is the main longitude, and it is called the prime meridian at 0 degree. Now, the longitudes, they are also drawn from east to west of the prime meridian. We start with 0 degrees of the prime meridian, and if we move towards the east, then you have a number, a longitude of maybe 20 degrees east of the prime meridian, or if you move towards the west, then it will be 20 degrees west of the prime meridian. The longitudes, you have to remember, they continue from east and west around the globe right up to 180 degrees. We start at 0 degree, but they continue right up to 180 degrees. Now, if we have 0 degree as the prime meridian, directly opposite to the 0 degree is the 180th meridian. Now, we do not call it 180 degrees, we call it 180 meridian, 180th meridian, sorry. And in the 180th meridian, we do not write east or west. Please keep that in mind. Now, just as how we said earlier, in the latitudes, the equator, which was right at the center, the equator, divided the entire earth into the northern hemisphere. In the north, this is called the northern hemisphere, and the area below the equator is the southern hemisphere. Similarly, the longitudes also do the same. The two main semicircles, like the prime meridian and the 180th meridian, they divide the earth into two halves, and these two halves are called the eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. So the eastern hemisphere lies east of the prime meridian and the western hemisphere lies west of the prime meridian. So please keep in mind, the main latitude is the equator. The main longitudes are the 0 degree meridian, prime meridian, and the 180th meridian. Now, the next thing that I'm going to talk about are the differences between latitudes and longitudes. This is important. It is given on page 72 of your book. The differences between latitude and longitudes. It's very important. Latitudes are circles of different sizes, while longitudes are semicircles of the same size. Okay? Number 2, latitudes are parallel to each other. They never meet. Latitudes are parallel to each other. They never meet. But longitudes, they meet at the poles. The longitudes, they meet at the poles. Latitudes, you must remember, latitudes, they run from east to west. They run from east to west. And longitudes, their lines run from north to south. North to south. Please keep that in mind. The equator, as we know, is numbered as 0 degree, and other latitudes, as you move along the equator, from the equator, the numbers change from 1 degree right up to 90 degrees north. And if you go to the south or the southern hemisphere, then from 1 degree south right up to 90 degrees south. Now, in the longitudes, what you have to remember is the prime meridian, this red line that you see here, the prime meridian is numbered at 0 degree, and the other longitudes are numbered from 1 degree onwards, east or west of the prime meridian. Now, these are the important differences between latitudes and longitudes. It's given very clearly once again in your book on page 72. Please go through it. Now, finally, at the end, we come to what is known as finding places with the help of latitudes and longitudes. Now, when you look at a map or when you look at a globe, I said it is possible to draw these lines on a map or on a globe. So when these lines, like the latitudes which run across right around like a circle, or the longitudes which run from North Pole to South Pole, they form a crisscross of lines. They form a crisscross of lines. Now this is called a global grid. Grid is when lines cross each other. So these lines, they are numbered. This grid work is numbered, and that is how you find places on the earth. We are able to find places on the earth because of the numbers of the latitudes and the longitudes, and these are called coordinates. They are called coordinates. These numbers are called coordinates, and with the help of coordinates, we are able to locate where a town or a city is situated on the earth. And with that, we come to the end of the chapter. Now, children, as you go along, you turn the page, you will find points to remember. It's very important. Please go through those points. I have also completed the exercises. You will be getting it. It will be uploaded on the school website. I have done it all. I have given you question and answers, fill in the blanks, match the following, even done the map work. I have solved all the question and answers, and it will be put up on the school website. Please do the work in your social studies book. And also remember, when you begin the exercise, please write a little title on the top of the page as second term, because these chapters we have started from the second term. Now, if there are any questions, you can always get back to me either through WhatsApp or through the telephone, and you can ask me questions if any clarification is needed. Please go through these videos, go through the assignment, complete your assignment, and do your work well. Now with that, we come to the end of the lesson, and I will see you later with a new chapter. Till then, take care, be good, and do your